Please see Jason at the bar. He's anxious to meet everyone. For those of you, if it's your first time here tonight, do me a favor and take out your cell phones. Take out your cell phones and you're going to text the word Ahern to 26786. That's AHERN to 26786. One more time, that's Ahern to 26786. The reason why you're doing that is you'll know all the things that are happening here at the hotel, like what we're doing here tonight. You also know the Christmas Eve menu and some of the New Year's Eve specials that we're running here at the hotel, which include a special dinner in Joel's Chop House and swinging in the new year with not special, let me back up, a friend and dear to my heart, Ryan Ahern. He doesn't perform here very often. He's usually someplace in another part of the world, actually. And so it's very special that we get to have him here this year. So tonight, the congressman's got a flight, so we're on a little bit of a tight schedule. So without further ado, let me introduce our honored host, Mr. George Harris.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ahern Hotel. On behalf of our chairman, Don Ahern, we welcome you to the Freedom Hotel. And let me promise you, this is a Freedom Hotel. During COVID, when they were threatening to put me and Shane in handcuffs, Don had a bunch of lawyers behind us to say, go ahead, try to put him in handcuffs. But we thank you. Tonight's a very special night because we have United States Congressman Mark Amodei to visit us. I apologize for my attire. My son's car broke down this afternoon, and I couldn't go home to change to be in a suit, which everybody in here knows who comes regularly. I'm usually in a suit. But, so tonight we have Mark Amodei, and Mark's going to give us an update on what's happening in Congress. He's going to tell you great news stories about our new speaker. We're going to talk about urban BLM property and why the BLM should not control that property and it should be turned over to the states immediately. We have not been able to beat the big fight, as John Lee will tell you, because John fought this fight when he was mayor of North Las Vegas. We have not been able to beat the big fight to get all our property, but we have to take little snippets at a time. So, without any further ado, Mark, where are you at, bud? Ladies and gentlemen, United States Congressman Mark Amodei. So I've known Mark, so let me see, I'm 26 years old. I've known Mark since I was 14. No, I've known Mark longer than I want to admit that I've known him. You okay? Here, pick up a mic. Hold on. Hello. There you go.
I'm just having a hard time hearing about your wardrobe and now your age, and it's like, anyhow, but go ahead. It's your outfit.
Oh,
Fire
no.
away, big guy.
So, by the way, everybody knows we stream these shows. Probably a couple of 100,000 people watch this, Mark. So, try not to be yourself.
I'll be nervous.
So I'm going to let Mark just say hello to you guys, introduce himself. He'll give you a little brief about him. He's from Northern Nevada, from one of the greatest cities, I think, in the state. I think you would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yes, George.
Mark, say hello.
Thanks, George. Thank you for the invite. So I was talking to George a minute ago, and I'm coming down and I'm going, I don't owe George any favors. Why am I doing this? And I said, oh yeah, that's right. He asked about a month ago, and I said I'd do it. So it's kind of an old-fashioned notion, but it's like, hey, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, then you need to do it. And so this is kind of a first thing for me, you know, all the lights and glitter and all that other sort of stuff. So I'll try not to break anything while I'm here and look forward to your questions, and let's go.
All right, so Mark, let's start with, tell everybody, so you guys, Mark's been a he's what I call the quiet congressman. And some other people they make comments, but, you know, in the legislature, everybody remembers Bob Beers. Bob Beers ran the Mean 15. These were guys who didn't want taxation put onto the people. And Mark was one of the mean 15. And Bob has the greatest compliment of Mark. He says, Mark is really good, George. When he wants to get something done, he finds a minion to do it for him. So his fingerprints aren't on it. Mark's a quiet leader.
It's called teamwork. Go ahead.
Mark's a quiet leader. So Mark now, I'm going to let him tell you, he's what we call in the political world a cardinal inside the United States Congress. He's, you can look at it two ways. He's either such a great leader that they put him in charge, or he's been there so long that they had no choice but to put him in charge. So Mark, tell everybody what you're doing in Congress now.
I'm a member of the Appropriations Committee, which are the folks who say, okay, you got this much money to do that. Go through agency budgets, that sort of thing. That's where whoever's doing something federally gets the money to do it. And so there are 12 subcommittees in the Appropriations Committee: State and Foreign Ops, Agriculture, MILCON, VA, Military Construction, Veterans Association, across the whole thing. And I'm the subcommittee chairman of what they call the legislative branch: Congressional Budget Office, General Accounting Office, Library of Congress, Capitol Police, members' office allowances, members' salaries, government printing office, just kind of the business of running the Congress is that committee. And the most unique thing, when you hear the stuff on whatever your favorite blog or broadcast stuff, it's the one out of the 12 committees where we don't have to wait for the president's budget. It's what we do to ourselves, not waiting for somebody else to do it to us. And so anyhow, it's been an interesting transformation from a member, which was fine, to now you sit at this table of 12 and they at least pretend like they care what you have to say. And so anyhow, that's what we've been doing.
So Mark, I think a lot of people, we'd like to know, why don't you give us some insight on our new speaker and tell
Okay.
a couple of the stories that happened to you through that whole process.
So I'm gonna try to be crisp so we can get through as much as possible. So if you think I'm hurrying or whatever and there's a follow-up or whatever, I mean, it's whatever your rules are, George. But here we go. So we promptly fill up the trash can with the top 4 draft round picks in the speaker stuff. We're firing Kevin McCarthy. No Steve Scalise. Even though you're the majority leader, you stink. Then we go, okay, Jim Jordan, the quintessential, that's our guy. Nope, he can't get to the votes needed on the floor. We go to Tom Emmer, the whip. No, he lasts 2 hours. And so the rule in the conference is the person who gets a majority of votes in the conference gets the support on the floor to elect a speaker. Yeah, right. We couldn't get to 218 for any of those people. And so there's a whole new slate comes up. I forget what day of the week it was, but it's getting late into the night. And so you got 4 or 5 people, and there's this Mike Johnson guy from Louisiana who was on the Trump defense team, on House Armed Services, on House Judiciary, whatever, fine. And so we go through a couple rounds and knock this person out, knock that person out, and the ones that are left. So he gets to over half of the conference. Okay, he's our nominee, just like the other 4. But then there's some people yelling in the back room, let's do a roll call vote right now. Because you got to have all the Republicans when you got, what did we have, a 3-vote majority or 4? When you're really good, you don't need a lot. And so they go through the roll call, they start the roll call, and I'm going, Jesus, last time I checked, I'm the 4th guy on the list. I don't know Mike Johnson. I don't know him. I mean, I'd like to flower that up for you. I don't know Mike Johnson. They call my name, I voted present. Yeah, yeah, right. And so they go through the whole roll call. There were like 3 of us that voted present. Massey, and I forget who the other guy was. And so Steve Scalise comes up to me and goes, Mark, what are you doing? And I said, Steve, I don't know this guy. I says, I'm not going back to Nevada when somebody asked the inevitable question, how come you voted for him? And my answer, if I'm going to tell the truth, is, well, because everybody else was. You know, that's some deep thought. And so I said, you know, we've been working on some stuff that's not in the nationwide picture, the sort of stuff that's sex and violence, but it's really important in Nevada. And I don't need somebody's help getting it passed in the House. I'll carry my own water, I'll get it done. But this will be important stuff when it comes time to conference with the Senate. And I don't want to find out, it's like, well, you know, we tossed you in with whatever in exchange for whatever. I says, it's phenomenally important. We've been working on it for a while. Lands bills, north and south. And you know what, the Guard unit up there needs J models for the C-130s. Not because we want our kids to have the neatest toys, but I firmly believe that if you're a C-130 unit and you don't have the J models, you're going away eventually, as in not there anymore. And so, Scalise says, well, you just need to talk to him. And I go, yeah, I guess I do. I'm back in my office. It's like midnight, phone rings, Mike Johnson. And so, you know, I'm not a complete idiot. I'm going, hey, Mr. Speaker, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, it was not my intent to impugn or offend. I said, but you and I haven't traveled in the same circles. I don't really know you. And so this is the funniest part. He says, I understand that, and there are no hard feelings. He says, but because you're one of the senior members of our caucus, he says, I have followed you. Now, I don't know this guy from Adams off Ox, and I'm thinking, stop right now. I'm for you, big guy, because you're the only guy I know that's followed me since I've been here. You're my guy. No, I didn't say that part, but he said, you know, I followed you, and I'm familiar with, and I said, well, here's the deal. So I explained to him, Northern Nevada lands package, Clark County lands package, C-130, J-Miles, there's some other stuff, and I said, Mr. Speaker, I don't need you to pass my stuff in the House. If I can't get that done, that's on me. What I do need you and your staff is to be aware that this is very important stuff in my little corner of the world, and it needs to be, you need to dig in if there's a disagreement with those smarter, wealthier, better-looking people at the north end of the building, the United States Senate. This is not just toss-it-in material. And so I told him, I says, I want three things. I want your cell number, I want your chief of staff cell number, and I want your resource person's cell number. And he said, that's fine, we'll make that happen. The next morning at 10 o'clock, his chief of staff was in my office, met with me and my LD. We went through all the stuff, about 45 minutes. Okay, so because we don't want to bushwhack you the first time you're going, well, we're in conference now and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, let me tell you about this. We don't come with an emergency. We come with a lot of preparation. So 45 minutes, I says, okay, we're in. So they have the roll call on the floor that the next day. All Republicans voted for him, and we're there. And so George says, well, how's that going? I said, well, first of all, asking to be the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives right now fits squarely under that thing where it's like, be real careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And so I said, you know, it turns out that maybe this Johnson guy is uniquely qualified to lead this herd of cats, if you will, because he's very conservative, he is spiritual, he is transparent. He's not a cheerleader, but he's very transparent in what he's going to do. And let's face it, our outfit is, you know, the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi puts a horse head in everybody's bed, and she doesn't have any problems the rest of the Congress. We Republicans, it's like, we love intramurals. And so it's like, well, I don't care what you said. My thing is this or that. It's like, they're going, oh, my God, what is this? It's like, when has it not been that way? So let's not get our blood pressure up. But the secret that Mike Johnson has is, I'll give you an example. Last week was National Defense Authorization Act. And it was like, well, if you're not going to basically fix everything that's wrong with the FISA court, You know, the guys that can approve the FBI spying on you, even if they're lying about all the stuff that they've got in their thing. If you guys aren't going to put that in there and fix that in this bill, we're not voting for it. And it's like, well, let's look at the other 85% of the bill. But before we go to that, let's take a look. Remember that the FISA reauthorization happens in April. So it's not like, oh, forget it. Don't worry about that. It'll all be fine. It's like their day is coming within a quarter. But oh, by the way, the other 85%, which one of you wants to say, hey, thank you for your service, enlisted men and women in the military? Can you go ahead and take an IOU until we get this FISA stuff worked out? You and your families? It's okay to be zeroed out on that, right? Well, let me be real transparent. I'm not zeroing the troops out waiting for somebody to figure out the bottom line on FISA. Am I fully on board with things need to change in FISA? And by the way, all those geniuses that lied to them and have gotten away with it so far, do we need to that's right. But you know what? If we don't do it in April, line up the horses and have them trample everybody who doesn't. But not voting against that. Why am I telling you that story? Because Mike Rogers says, we're going to put it up as a suspension bill. Normal voting bills in the House, you have to have a rule approved before the bill comes to the floor. And it tells you what's germane for amendments, which ones are in order, which ones aren't. You know, it's an administrative thing. But if you don't pass the rule, if the rule goes down, the bill never gets to the floor. So some of my colleagues are like, we're going to take the rule down. So what does he do? He says, we're going to put it on the suspension calendar. Because if you got 3/4 of the votes in the place, you don't need a rule. Now, in the old days, John Boehner used to go across the aisle and talk to the Democrats and go, how many votes you got for this? And then he'd figure out how many he has, and he'd do it that way. And, you know, everybody would be pissed. Oh, you're working with the Democrats or whatever. Okay. Mike Johnson just says, we're going to put it on the suspension calendar. And all those people that want to basically ignore 85% of the bill, which, by the way, is pretty good stuff, then they can stand up and be counted. And if the bill goes down, then it goes down, and, you know, we zero out a bunch of stuff and whatever. So, doesn't go over and make a deal with them, just says, let's let people stand up and be counted on what defense hawks they are. The bill passed. And it's like, didn't do it where people are going, we're going to fire you, we're going to do a motion to vacate the chair, because now, hell, you need 4 people, 3 people, something like that. So anyhow, I think he's doing pretty good. It's funny, though, that a spiritual guy who was on nobody's radar screen before, now you're seeing stuff about, oh, there's some really bad stuff about his family and his kids and his wife and, you know, all this other sort of stuff. And it turns out, and you're just sitting there going, you know what? It's made things easier for me. It's like there is nothing that won't be said in the effort for what somebody perceives as political gain, whether they're within your party or without it, to where it's like, you know, it kind of makes it easier to get to the point where you go, it's a good thing I don't have any feelings, because if I had them, they'd be hurt. But go ahead and do what you do, and we'll go ahead and do what we're trying to do to keep the lights on and moving in the conservative direction.
So, we now know that Mike Johnson's a good guy. So we're doing what we always do. We'll now take a question from the audience. If it's not a good question, you know I'll just say, sit down. But so we're going to take a question, then I'm going to ask Mark another question, and we'll let him answer. So real quick, who's got a quick question? David. It's Congressman, by the way.
Dave and I go back to quorum calls like...
You go back about 15 years. Why, despite all of the conversation, can't Congress cut spending?
Well, a fair question.
But that was a complicated question.
Why can't, despite all the conversation, why can't Congress cut spending? That's the question. Everybody hear that?
Why can't Congress cut spending?
So, the House of Representatives, in your Appropriations Committee, cut spending the largest it's been in wartime, post-wartime history. I should know the number, but it's a big one. You can look it up. We went through all the bills when Kevin McCarthy was still the speaker, met with Chuck and Uncle Joe, and they did their deal and said, okay, so here's the top line number, whatever it was. We went back and went below that, which, by the way, according to the Democrats, is breaking your word. You went back on the deal or whatever, and it's like, hey, it's a pretty public process. If you folks in the Senate want to save the world from us, go right ahead. But here's the interesting part. So we do all that, and one of the other things we want to do is we wanted to pass all 12 appropriations bills individually. No more minibuses, no more omnibuses. And by the way, we want to do it on time so you didn't need any continuing resolutions. Well, we get through 80% of the spending in the bills at the biggest reduction in spending in wartime history, post-wartime history, out of committee. And so now they go to the floor. There's people who got to be transparent. We got to have the ability to offer amendments. We did all that. And guess what? A bunch of amendments didn't pass. You could watch it on the floor, see who voted for them, who voted against them, all that stuff. And we get to some of the bills. Agriculture bill. Andy Harris is the chair. The only Republican that serves in a House district from the state of Maryland. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? But anyhow, the bill goes to the floor, and it didn't get the votes on the floor. And so you're sitting there going, you want transparency, and you want regular order, and all that stuff, and you want cuts. Here they all are, and you've got Republicans voting against it. By the way, the Democrats basically vote against all of the bills when we're in the majority. And when you got 4 votes to spare or 3 votes to spare, it doesn't take much to get that apple cart tipped over. But nonetheless, you're going to see it in real time without filters and whatever. So we're proud of the work that we did. The Senate has historically, in the time I've been there, not done much transparent. They just wait until a few days before the end of the fiscal year, come out of the room with the closed door and say, well, here's our deal. And so you go back and you do the best you can. So I would remind everybody that we've received the message loud and clear, and you can check that on what came out of the House in terms of the Appropriations Committee, on the Ledge Branch bill, on VA Milcon, State and Foreign Ops, all that stuff. You can see what that was and compare it to what it was in the before. This is the most important. Nobody said, okay, mission accomplished, we're done. But it was the first big step in being transparent, not doing omnibuses, and making a big cut. And you say, well, how do I know that'll be any good? I'll just tell you this. When I got there in 2011, Barack Obama was the president, and we were upside down by $1 trillion a year. Not in the overall debt, just that year. The rest of the time that John Boehner was there, which was like 5 years or something, we cut that in half in 5 years. Not mission accomplished, but I tell you that to say you can get things in order pretty quick. And so it's like, is this how you do it? That's part of how you do it. The other part is you grow the economy. It's like when the economy's growing, last year was the biggest tax collection year in the United States history. So there's cash flow to get well with. You got to stay the course, but it doesn't mean one of those things where it's like, hey, after I've been dead for 10 years, if everything goes good, those 2 lines will meet. So there's good news. If you're willing to look 360 degrees around the compass and you hold people's feet to the fire, then it's like, this is doable, not like, oh my God, whatever. And I'll tell you, the last thing I'll tell you is, how did we get that far out over whatever that quickly? Well, remember that COVID thing? The first bill that we passed when Donald Trump was still in office was like, okay, here's what we're going to do, and it was a lot of money. I remember, here's somebody that everybody loves with all their heart, Mitch McConnell. ooh, tough crowd on a
Oh,
Tuesday.
no, these are not lovers of Mitch McConnell.
Yeah. But even Mitch McConnell said, okay, we got to do another, we're going to do another bill, and we got to do this, and blah, 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 and all this. Even Mitch McConnell said, why don't we see how the first one's working before we start backfilling? Nope, none of that. Oh, by the way, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. And they got these great names, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And I know there's spiritual people in here, so I won't talk like my father would have said it. My mom used to say when she was like, Mark, please don't swear when you're talking to those people. So, out of respect for our venue and Don and some of you other folks, it's like, I'm going to, anyhow. But you sit there and look at that, and you know, the funny thing is like, oh, you Republicans suck, and you blah, blah, blah. It's like, you look at how many Republicans voted for the second, the third, and the fourth. I invite you to look. While we were stacking up trillions in debt for those bills, you know the old Rahm Emanuel, you never want to waste a good emergency because you can get stuff done that you never could have got done normally. Well, guess what? Rahm Emanuel was alive and well in the 2, 3, and 4, those COVID bills, because there were trillions in them, and it was like, and listen, there's people sitting in this room, it's like, hey man, there's public utility construction, there's public works stuff, I mean, there's all this infrastructure stuff. It's like, well, there sure as heck is. I remember a long meeting with the AGC folks going, folks, you think this is good? And they're talking about a bunch of road projects, drainage projects, municipal. I go, there's not a single thing in that bill that says that money's going to be spent in Nevada. Not southern Nevada, not northern Nevada. And so it's like, it's a dumb idea anyhow. But by the way, you're going, oh, this is going to be great for the construction industry. And it's like, really? So I know one of the big ones, they did 30 some odd miles of fiber optic between Fernley and Lovelock or someplace. And it's like, man, this is huge. So I call my AGC people up there back there and go, how many of you got a piece of that? And they go, what are you talking about? I'm going, didn't you know that, you know, and it's like, because everything else is political, it's like, well, that's basically XYZ construction out of Chicago. They're not even using Nevada subs. They're hardly using Nevada suppliers. Now, that's small potatoes compared to what you guys got going down here. And, you know, it's like, well, we got some stuff down here. And so we're like, that's fine. Tell us what you got. Because we're going to go back and say, did we get our share of that money that we didn't have? But at least it's creating jobs and whatever, if it's local. So anyhow, that's a long-winded answer. Actually, not that long-winded. But there's usually more to these things when you hear, oh, they didn't do anything on FISA, they should all be shot. Or, you know, we got this thing, and SB's voted for all that. It's like, well, first of all, why don't you check and see who actually did?
All right, so, Mark, let's talk about something near and dear to our hearts and very important. You know, yesterday was a historical day in our country because more people entered the United States of America illegally than they did coming into New York City. And Don and I were lucky enough, Governor Abbott came and had lunch with Don the other day, and God, I love that guy. He goes, George, Don, here's what I do. When they get over the border and I can wrangle them up, I put them on Greyhound buses and I send them to Chicago and New York. But our question is, when are you guys going to, there's got to be some adult supervision. When is this nonsense going to stop?
Well, we're the guys who said, even though we support the Israelis, even though we support anything that's bad for Vladimir Putin, because if you think that's expensive, if you let him start to overrun stuff in Eastern Europe, would you tell the president that I'm not available right now, please? Even though it's like, you think it's expensive, if we have to start defending all sorts of stuff in Europe, it's like, it's cheaper now, whatever. But that notwithstanding, it's like, we're not giving anybody any money until you take care of that stuff at the border. And we were criticized for that because the Senate was like, no, we want to do this and we're going to do it. And it's like, we're not going to do it. So your 3-person majority in the House said, and stuck with it last week, we're not doing it. Yeah, maybe, am I overstating it? we're not doing this until you do something on the border. The administration flipped us the bird, that's bull, and we're going to send our spin monsters out, and they're going to do their thing and say how reckless we are. I just got to tell you, because the only reason you got me here is because I happen to have an election certificate that's good for another 12 months. Yeah. So it's like, don't start thinking you're all that in a bag of chips. In this business, you got a personnel session every 24 months. I'll just tell you, it's one of those things where it's like I said, when you get a little older, it's a good thing you don't have any feelings because they might be hurt because of what people are saying. But I'm not coming back and looking at people in this room or a room in Winnemucca or Reno or anywhere and say, well, you know, whatever. It's like, you fix that stuff and don't tell me you're building more processing centers or whatever. You enforce the border or no. And I'd like to tell you that's a hard call, but it's not. And it's like, if that's the wrong call and I get thrown out of office for it, I'll accept that. But you said, why can't we do this? Like, the House has made that decision. And by the way, the first week of the 118th Congress, which was almost a year ago, was H.R. 1. Take a look at that. We passed that to say, here's where this outfit is on it. But of course, you know, a lot of the communications professionals these days, they don't get paid to be accurate. They get paid to deliver a message or a spin. Look at H.R. 1 that the House passed when we had a romping, stomping 6 or 5. Don't be checking me on that math. You know, that's why I went.
Take your phone away, sir.
The other way, yeah. So anyhow, I'll just tell you, I'm not voting. I want the Ukrainians to be successful, even though they're not virgins on some of the ethical stuff. Neither is Vladimir Putin. It's like it's cheaper to basically have them blow themselves up, the Russians in Ukraine, instead of consolidate there and keep moving. Oh, by the way, there's other people watching. You know, there's an outfit called China. There's North Korea. There's the Iranians, which also gets us into Israel, as well as a half a dozen other folks where it's really tough for us to project strength right now with this administration. So it's not easy to say nothing for those folks until you do this. But frankly, it's not the Republicans. It's the fact that this administration is in total political spin, la-la land. Like, oh, no, it's okay. And if you don't think it's okay, it's because of the Trump administration. It's just, I can't believe the way you can say stuff like Las Vegas is located in the state of New Hampshire and have people go, oh, okay. So we're sticking with it. And I'd like to tell you, it's a hard thing, and we're hard people, but it's like, it's not a hard thing. It has to be stopped, and we can't wait for the election.
Okay, so with that, Mark, let's look 6 months down the road. Let's talk about the presidential race right now. And what do you see? And because some people don't understand, as I told you guys, Mark is a behind-the-scenes. He's never going to be on TV pounding his chest. He quietly gets everything done behind the scenes. None of these people know how important you were to the Trump administration, and you should toot your horn a little on that, okay? But what do you see in the next 6 months with the presidential election?
Well, you say, well, what's in the air right now? And so you've got the whole Biden stuff going through House Ethics, House Judiciary, and House Ways and Means. You say, Ways and Means because that's the Treasury, that's IRS, that's how you're paying your taxes. Judiciary has this role, you know, according to this thing called the Constitution, which was not used for the 3 times that Nanny and her pals, you know, have such a phobia and composure loss with respect to Donald Trump. They're like, we don't need to follow the rules. Just impeach him. Who cares if it's made up? You know, 6 days after January 6th, I mean, we were voting on the floor for impeachment. That was a real hard vote. No. But anyhow, you sit there and look at this and you go, okay, so on the Trump side, we've got a guy who every time they pulled, and listen, I'm a former assistant U.S. attorney. I'm a prosecutor way back. And I'm going, you guys have done, you're doing an indictment. I mean, and those of you that are familiar with the legal system on the criminal side, you know, they say a good prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich. Well, it's probably on their side, they can even indict a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so I'm looking at all this stuff going, you people have totally vandalized the rules when it comes to impeachments of anybody, much less a president. You've just totally ignored them for political expediency. I may not like what the results are on some stuff, but if you don't have a basic respect for the process, then what do you got? I mean, this outfit, this country has existed for respect for the rule of law. And that stock ain't trading at all-time highs these days. So you say next 6 months, it's like, well, and then you've got the news folks that are in the lobbying business, they're just not registered. They're sitting there going, oh my God, there's this, there's that, there's whatever. And you're going, you know, in the olden days, this person wouldn't even be viable. Remember when, I know this is back than all you young people in this room. Remember when Gary Hart got blown out of the presidential thing because he was seen getting off a yacht with a blonde girl who was younger, who wasn't his wife? I mean, it was that, you're done. Nowadays, it's like, whoa, was she 18 and was there just one? And so I'm sitting there looking at this going, it doesn't appear to be affecting Donald Trump in any way in terms of the march towards the nomination. And so, while depending on what channel you watch on what day, it's like, oh, this is big trouble, this is big trouble. It's like, well, turn to the other channel where they show you what Uncle Joe's polling stuff is and how even his own fellow donkeys are like, this dog won't hunt. So I don't know where that ends up, George, in 6 months. But I do know this and I'm not a lifelong Republican. I've only been one since '88. It was after Carter, Mondale, and somebody else where I go, hey, these just aren't my guys. Oh, Dukakis. You know, Dukakis, that ad with the helmet on and the tank, and I'm like, these ain't my guys. I'm not a political ideologue, but so anyhow, I don't know where we are in 6 months. I can just say, well, where we are right now looks pretty good. The challenge for Republicans and independents in this country is going to be, are you willing to go a little bit deeper than whatever the spoon feed is from the blog, the teeter-totter, whatever all that stuff's called? You can tell I'm on it all the time. And it's like, well, it was on TV. It must be true. And you're like, not these days it ain't. So the challenge, I'll just put it out, is do some homework. And by the way, part of homework is asking questions like is happening here, where it's like, you know, I heard you like to beat baby seals to death and blah, blah, blah. Is that true? Fair question. And so I think where we're at 6 months from now, I'm not a crystal ball guy on the economy, but there's certainly not a lot. God bless all you geniuses in the stock market who are setting new records for reasons that aren't apparent to us non-sophisticated people. But being half Italian and half Irish, like, doesn't bother me. I bury it in the backyard or someplace else anyhow. The interest rate isn't great, but
you
at least
and Don bury money in the backyard. That's funny.
well, not my own backyard, because then you guys will be up there digging around in my backyard. But anyhow, so let me put it this way. I'll finish it this way. I'd rather be us than them right now.
I agree with that. Okay, so we're going to take one question from the audience, and then we're going to bring Don Ahern up, because we'd like to split this up, and Don's going to introduce you to one of his friends. But who's got a question, and it better be a good question. Okay, way in the back. Well, thank Don for letting us do this. Took a lot for me to talk him into it. $20 a week I got to pay him to do this. Okay, hold on. Christine, she's way back in the other area, so we're just going to bring, but I'm not giving her the mic, because if you give this woman a mic, she'll never give it back.
Not true. Where are we social-economically in handling another pandemic? Do you see that on the horizon?
Well, the challenge has been to learn the lessons from the last one. And you say, well, what are those lessons? Well, there's vaccines, there's supplies, there's masks, there's gloves, there's, God forbid, ventilators, there's gowns, there's all that stuff that was all an emergency, and the building's burning down, and we got to fix that. So the question is, have we learned anything from the last time? And by the way, some of that supply chain stuff is like, it's kind of a problem when you got to go to China to get that stuff. So, have you learned anything from that? And the answer is, yeah, we have, but nobody should be saying mission accomplished. You still have supply chain issues. We're still, by the way, I think it needs to be done. Rand Paul's one of the guys leading the charge about all of the bovine scat with around the Fauci thing and gain of function and Wuhan and were we giving them money and all that stuff? So in one sense, it's water under the bridge, but in another sense, you can't forget history, or you know the old saying, you're gonna repeat it. And so, yes, we are on the way to doing that, but we're not done with it yet. From the operational stuff that I just mentioned to we need to know who did what to who. And by the way, part of that story is who was lying to us about it that was on our own team ostensibly. And so, work in progress. If that's your cup of tea, get a hold of my office and say, hey, I was at that kegger that George Harris did, but he didn't tell Don Ahern that it was a kegger. And I asked him about this, and we'll get you all the status stuff because it's a fair question, and so we're happy to do that. Yep.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, everybody, is I'm going to bring Don up because unfortunately we only have another half hour with Mark because Mark has a little medical thing that he found out that he's got to take care of.
Hey, doesn't
tomorrow.
HIPAA apply in Las Vegas?
No, not with us. But Mark's got an early appointment with the doctor in the morning.
Personality transplant.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring Don up, and Don and I were in a wrestling match last week, and I pinned him. So now I gotta.
Okay, hold on. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Break a leg, big guy. Not really.
No, it's okay. So Don, go ahead and sit down. Mark, go ahead and sit down. I'm going to bring another chair up. Here, you go sit down.
That's yours?
No. There might be someone coming up with you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. It's an honor to have you here. I've noticed some really fine folks out there, a lot of familiar faces that I've seen, and I'm so grateful to be able to come up here. I got to tell you, I'm just thankful for this man. What a blessing he is for our state. Is that right? You may not be a big spiritual preacher man, but I think you got a good soul and a good heart. But, when you look through the number of politicians that we've got in our state, you are numero uno. Am I right, folks? Yeah. And I can tell you that this little group of people right here, along with the rest of the state of Nevada, is going to continue to support you, Mark. We're gonna continue to love you. And I don't know whether we actually got any other really great politicians to hang our hat on, but we need to turn some things around in this state because we're losing this state, you know what I mean? So, and thank you very much for the hard work you did on the last election with President Trump and so forth. I've got a few thoughts here, and then we're going to bring we've got an interesting character out here in the audience we're going to bring up, introduce you to, and ask him a few questions toward the end. And if you have to skate for that personality, behavioral problem, whatever you've got going on, then we'll let you out of here at any time. But I had a couple of questions of my own, and a couple of them that my wife was interested in. And so anyhow, on behalf of my wife, I'm going to get this one out of the question. Is the United States government is there an agenda in any way to move to a digital currency, to a place where we're not going to be able to buy that pizza over there without the government knowing we're buying pizza versus hamburgers or something like that?
So the answer is the question is there a movement? And yeah, there are some people that are for it, and it's not an unusual, they're going, what's going to happen with that? I don't speak for anybody but myself, but I think by virtue of hanging around with the folks I've hung around with, there's no appetite in the House of Representatives to do anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I know it's like all the rage, and no offense, car dealers, electric vehicles, and all that other sort of stuff, and it's like they get some news or whatever, but digital currency and even the stuff in the stock market is like, I just don't see it happening. But I will say this, elections have consequences. So if you want that, then you go out there and get behind all those forward-thinking people that know better than you do what's best for you and your money, as well as your gas stove and your, all that other sort of stuff.
Okay.
But no.
Okay. So it's really not that big of a deal. It isn't something that's like a big wave that's going to come upon us here in the next year or two. Or
You got to continue to stand guard,
paranoia.
but no, I'd rather be where we are right now.
All right. Okay, you mentioned earlier, I think it was Boehner, you said would work across the aisles and go over there and grab a few votes and this and that. What's wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with Republicans and Democrats kind of working together? Or, this paralysis we've got seems to be more bad than good.
Well, let's define working across the aisle. If
Okay.
you're going across and saying, I need your vote, then you can expect them to say, here's what I want in exchange for it. That's not good, because what you're gonna end up giving up is stuff that you normally wouldn't have done. The difference between that and what Mike Johnson's doing is he's saying, I'm not gonna go over and say I need your help, because you're gonna get asked, what do you want for it? Or what will you give me for it? The difference between what he's doing and what John Boehner did is he just said, I'm putting it up on suspension and we'll see where the votes are. So if you guys want to covey up as the donkeys and take national defense authorization down, have a nice day. The fact that, and I'll tell you part of the reason I think they're doing it, because they're going, well, this splits the Republicans up. It's like, listen, the Republicans are going to be the way they've been for a long time. The test for Republicans, sitting in a room where I'm just going to go be a wild guess here, there's more Republicans than Democrats, unless George is moonlighting on us. It's like the test for Republicans are, can you govern? Can you govern? Can you bring about a reduction in spending? Can you do stuff that's pro-life, that gets this abortion on demand stuff, whatever the heck? Can you do those sorts of things? And I got to tell you, so far his record doesn't look too bad.
Well, it looks like to me, you mentioned this abortion thing. Seems like to me that we as Republicans want to do this right thing about abortion, but it seems like it's going to kill our politics. There's just I think there's too many people in the Republic and that are not in favor of basically taking the rights away from women or allowing abortions. And shouldn't we maybe compromise a little bit and allow abortion under certain conditions or something? I mean, we're losing some of the silent women vote,
Well,
I think.
Fair question. Since we're sitting in Nevada, here's what I tell people. They go, well, you're a Republican and you're not for women's health and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And I go, yeah. First of all, the Supreme Court decision said it ought to be up to the states. Not a bad idea. Didn't say what the rules should be. It said ought to be up to the states. And I just got to tell you, like, well, you should hate that Dobbs decision. It's like, the states get to decide? I don't hate that. Okay, I'm from Nevada. Well, what's Nevada done? Nobody wants to talk about this. Nevadans in 1988 went to the polls and voted for what the rules in Nevada are. Now, I may not agree with them on some of the stuff, but you can't be in my business and say, well, thank you for voting for me, but I disagree with how you voted on that thing. But they didn't stop there. They said, if you want your policy to evolve, you have to go back to the polls and have the same people that made the policy change it. Now, they're not exactly the same. It's 88, but whatever. And so I sit there and go, do I respect how people vote? Yes, I do. And so, do I want to work for it to maybe change some things around? But, and this is the part they hate, I said, in Nevada, you can have an abortion for any reason you want for the first 6 months of your pregnancy. You don't have to have a reason. Now, that's pretty aggressive talk, especially in this room. But that's what the voters said. Why am I telling you that story? I'm telling you that story, Don, because a lot of our challenge on women's health and reproductive policy is, I think you got a bunch of idiots doing the messaging where you're like, what state am I in? Do you have a rule? Do you not have a rule? The Supreme Court said it should be up to you and the state, so what the hell? Almost made it. Anyhow.
So let me ask you, is that the way it is in the state of Nevada? Because I remember when that popular vote was done.
Yeah.
Is it 6 months?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't
6
know that.
months, life of the mother, incest, whatever the heck. I think there's, I didn't brush on it, but I think you got to tell the parents if you're under 18. I mean, okay, well, if it wasn't in there, then the legislature did it. But then once again, we're back to elections have consequences, you know? And you look at the margins on a lot of those legislative races down here, they ain't insurmountable. And I'll shut up there.
Well, we really need the women's vote. And if this is an issue, sounds like to me it's a messaging issue, not a real issue.
Well, let me
for
put
the
it to you
state
this
of
way.
Nevada.
You can live, you can talk about the rule in Nevada and live. And you know who else did it kind of that way? Joe Lombardo. Another fact, which may be inconvenient, but it is a fact.
Joe Lombardo.
Explained it the same way. The voters of, the voters decided what our rules are.
Right, right. Okay, switch a little subject here real quick. As interest rates have just climbed and climbed, and you know, and the Treasury bills are the interest rates that the government pays. And when you got this 33 trillion or whatever, I can't even keep up with the number. I don't know. I saw one of these digital things the other day, and the numbers were going so fast I couldn't even read it. It was going up so quickly. But you know, this has got to. You know, I actually thought to myself, and I was wrong, about a year or two ago. I says, you know, they'll never raise interest rates because I don't think the government will ever allow it to happen because they got such a high debt, they'll never be able to afford it. But yet it is happening, and now the delta, as you were talking earlier, and these interest rates is great if you got a few bucks in the bank. You're getting 5%, you know, for you know that, but that doesn't represent very many people out of a population that actually can save, that have saved money. You know, it's costing everybody. What's it doing? How does the government can afford 5-6% now on these Treasury bills that are out there?
They can't. I mean, you know, I think people kind of got comfortable with the idea of debt when interest rates were at almost nothing. But they're a long ways from there now, and servicing the debt is, if it's not the most expensive part now of the budget, I think it's number 2. Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah. And so that's one of the things where it's like, you know, that's the reality where people are sitting there going, oh, you know, it's really okay. And it's like, really? We're paying more for, you know, whatever, pick your passion. We're paying more for interest, a lot of it on those 3 COVID bills after the first one, but other stuff. We're paying more on that than we are your favorite thing, like, I want you to spend money on this. And so I think that's one of the things that gets back to George, and where do you see things in 6 months and whatever. I don't know why people didn't vote their pocketbooks in the 2020 election. You know, I mean, they sure as heck did it with Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. And you know, so people always vote their pocketbooks. They didn't vote it in 2020. And that's because I think people got focused on a lot of other stuff.
Well, as we try to get to a pause here in our evening, what's this deal in Colorado where they're trying to get Trump off the ballot?
Well, it didn't work.
Oh, I thought it did work. I thought they passed it.
No, I got an email from one of his folks that said good news or from Elise Stefanik saying good news in Colorado. They appealed it and they reversed it. Who did? The Colorado Supreme Court.
That's not the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah. We'll just let that sit. You know, and that, Don, leads into something. A couple of things where you're like, well, you know, what? I gotta tell you, there's a couple of guiding lights for me. Doesn't mean they ought to be your guiding lights, but they're helpful to me. And one is a saying that was attributed to Ben Franklin. Real simple. Well done is better than well said. End of statement. Did you get on TV? No, well, it didn't happen. It's like, well, you know what? I think that's well done is better than well said. There's another one that I know you've heard, which is like, what is it? It goes, fate whispers to the warrior, I don't think you'll be able to withstand the storm. And the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. Why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because we got ourselves a storm. And so this, that, or the other sort of thing, one of the things that helps me go, I'm not doing that. And I don't care if Plan calls me a rotten SOB or somebody else and whatnot. It's like, if you do your homework and you're transparent and you're whatever, it's like, that's what I'm doing. And you don't have to try to read between the lines. And so what I would just encourage is, I know it's a struggle and some days look awful. Be the storm. Think about being the storm. You've been the storm on some stuff. All of you guys have been. I am the storm. Think about that. Thank you very much for giving me a little bit of your time.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't break anything while I was here, Don.
Yeah.
So if I can get up.
Okay, you're taking off, so you're not sticking around for dinner. Okay, well, hang out up here if you want.
Who's this guy?
That's Georgie Porgy. Hey, I got to tell you, I just got to tell you, there's some beautiful people in this room. They're all beautiful. They wouldn't be here. But, you know, we have some great, I think there's some politicians out here, but I do see John Lee sitting out here, who is the great mayor of North Las Vegas, which is now running for a great office.
Who I hope is a colleague of mine shortly.
But, huh?
Who I hope is a colleague of mine shortly.
I certainly do. Yeah. And we got Dave Gibbs out here, you know, which is really a great operative in our Republican Party, which, golly, can you imagine if we just had 100 more of him out there? And I'm sorry, there's the lights. I can't see some of the people, but I know there's great. But you're just so fabulous, Mark. We want to bring up a really neat guy. Can we do that?
It's your place, Don. You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Well, Trent, would you come up, please? And I'm going to. This is Trent Skaggs from the great state of Utah, and he's going to. Are you okay right there? I am. Okay. Here, we'll put this down so we can see you. So Trent is pretty well known as recently of kind of kicking Romney's ass over in Utah, causing him to back off, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his story. Congressman?
That's great that you said ass. I feel great about everything I said before.
Well, we speak two languages, English and foul, right? Yeah. So Trent, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I firmly believe you're a winner.
Yeah,
I
well,
think
thank you.
got this one.
I'm in good company with the language, so that's great.
Okay.
No, but I appreciate you so much, Don and Caroline. Thank you so much. to allow your neighbor here to come on down and speak with you all. I mean, I think this is important. I was in West Palm Beach, Florida at Mar-a-Lago just last weekend with Carrie Lake, and there I had folks ask, you know, well, we can't vote for you, but you can vote for us, right? You can advance an America First constitutional conservative agenda in the U.S. Senate and finally get this country back on track. And so I think it's important, even though you may not be in my state, again, you can't vote for me, I can vote for you. I've been a lifelong Utahn, run several companies, helped take a company public last year, listed on NASDAQ in the energy space. So a good business background. The last 10 years, I've been a mayor. I've been in the city of Riverton and running that community. And I finally, this year, folks came to me and said, you need to run for U.S. Senate. And I'd said, yeah, enough is enough. I'd had enough of Mitt Romney. We put out a launch video. We got over 1 million views on Twitter. And right away was the Romney challenger. He started out at 50% in the polls amongst Republican primary electorate. And by 3 months later, he was down to 30%. I did about 50 town halls across the state. And when he got down to that level, he made the decision late September. He said, I'm not going to be seeking re-election. So, and right out of the gate, you know, I was able to earn the endorsement of Mark Levin, of Charlie Kirk. I just got back from Phoenix at the America Fest there with Charlie Kirk and did Steve Bannon's show there with him. But we've been endorsed by so many, Rick Grinnell, Kash Patel, who I know you've had here, about 100 local elected officials in the state of Utah. So we've got a great grassroots organization. We've raised some good money, and we think we are the favorite here in the race, and we want to be able to get back there, work with great congressmen, work with great senators, like in my home state, Mike Lee, who I think is fantastic, and will align myself with him.
Well, one of the things we try to do on these little Tuesday get-togethers is we obviously try to get our own local state politicians and learn all we can about our own state, but we often invite folks from other states. And being a sister state, you know, you're close, so we're here to love you. And I don't know, we could take questions from the audience if we want, but sometimes we like to know how politics look through Utah or through another state when they come in here. What's the, you know, how do they view things? You know, because we get stuck in our own little channel, but how do you view Utah and Nevada working together? And of course, as we come to a close, we really want to pitch for you. You know, I'm here to tell you, I've already donated to your campaign. I'm going to donate to the PAC, you know, and
well, thank you.
The two of you, I feel so good about giving my political money to these two right here. So.
Thank you. And it's so greatly appreciated. You know, folks, to run for office, you know, is not an easy thing. You put your life on the line. You put your life in a fishbowl. You know, your family's out there too. I've got a 14-year-old son, 11-year-old daughter, and but it's really, we couldn't do this without financial support. You just can't. And so it's invaluable. It really, really is. So thank you all that are so active in your parties, in politics, and in donating. You know, to answer the question, I think that Utahns have a lot of the same concerns that you do here in Nevada.
Yeah.
At my site at trentstaggs.com, I say, I will champion every day as a U.S. Senator, smaller government, safer families, and a stronger economy. And we have something in common with the public lands issue. I mean, 67% of our state is owned and controlled by the federal government. We talked a little about that a little bit last time. Yeah. I want to serve on 3 committees: finance, small business and entrepreneurship, and also natural resources, which encompasses public lands. The company that I took public is in the energy space. I've won the endorsement of the Oil and Gas Workers Association of America, many other great organizations out there. And so I think we need to work together with a caucus of Western states that have this issue and move it.
Can you two just touch on how does the Congress and the United States Senate, how do they work together? Do you guys communicate? Like, it's not like paralysis like we have with the Republicans and the Democrats. Is there a day-to-day, lots of communication going on?
Well, I can speak from my experience.
Sure.
And I'll be quick. When Harry Reid was alive, that's right, Harry Reid. Yeah, but let me tell you what. he knew about public lands. And after he died, until the Fallon Range expansion bill, the Congress, the House had passed, the Congress hadn't passed a single piece of public lands legislation. Now, I don't need to tell you people in the home of Sniplama, which is 23 years old now, which had a lot to do with how Las Vegas has matriculated to what it's become in accordance with your local county commissions, city councils, which do planning and zoning, that when you're in a state, you know, Utah's 67, we're 85, I think, maybe. We were higher, but anyhow, it's like public lands are incredibly important to how this state does.
Absolutely.
And so, I'll tell you the challenge for Western people on either side of the thing is, most people are from states that are majority-owned private property. Rhode Island has 0. They're the other end of the thing. Alaska has the most acres, but you look at Utah, you look at Idaho, you look at Wyoming, heck, even California's got 40% public lands. And then you look at us and they're like, oh, well, it's our land and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, we put up, Rob Bishop, the Dean of the West in the House for many years, has a map that it's red, it shows the West, and it's got red on all the stuff that's federal lands. You know, if it wasn't for the Transcontinental Railroad Act, Union Pacific, Central Pacific, that stuff, because there's kind of a little bit of white following the railroad thing across the north, the rest of the state's red. And you're going, hey, this isn't where we're trying to, you know, cut a fat hog and take something from you while you're not looking. There isn't a single unincorporated town, city, anything in the state of Nevada that isn't completely surrounded by federal land, including Las Vegas, which is why you needed Sniplama. Last thing I'm going to, so it's a challenge for us to basically bring that home to our colleagues. But I want to give you one more fact. You're like, well, it's like Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act, 23 years old, authorized the sale of 70,000 acres in Clark County. You know how much has been sold in those 23 years? About half. About half. 23 years for 35,000 acres. I'm sorry, I don't care what your political affiliation is, that is not runaway growth and disrespect for the environment. Yeah. 35,000 acres in 23 years is not yeehaw, drop the blade, kill all the animals, and pave it over.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree.
Unfortunately, Mark has to get on a plane. We want to thank Mark. We want to thank you for coming down.
Bless you, buddy.
We appreciate this. I looked on my watch. You still owe me 7 favors, so you're okay. I will, yeah, count them. Ladies and gentlemen, United States Congressman Mark Amodei. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Big, big round.
Wonderful
Numero
man.
uno. Thank you, Mark.
And real quick before Mark leaves, Dave, stand up. You know, Dave is doing, before we leave here, we're going to spend a little more time with Trent and Don, but before we leave here, David is doing Repair the Vote, which will require you to show an ID for you to vote. And Mark is what are you hunting for?
Right. He's back here, Mark. I'm sorry.
How do I get out of here?
Oh, hold on. He's a congressman.
He's so great.
We're a comedy act.
What a great man. I love that guy.
Anyways, Mark's a big supporter of our efforts. We would like all of you tonight, before you leave, to sign the petition. It's called Voter ID. And if you go to vote, you're going to have to show an ID to vote. It's crazy. Because, you know, yes, ma'am, if you go to the bank, they'll give you $10 million without showing your ID. I know.
I keep getting emails.
Yes.
Sign a petition. You have to sign law.
Yes. Yes.
You can't sign one online.
No, you can't sign it online. That's the Democrats asking you for money, ma'am. No, it is. It's all the petitions online are from Democrats. Anyways, this was just a brief thing because Mark was leaving and Mark wanted me to make sure we said hi to David. But Trent, we thank you for being here. This guy will be our next U.S. Senator from Utah. So let Don and Trent finish their little talk.
George, you're welcome to sit in the middle here, but you'd probably rather sit next to my wife.
I'd
Yeah.
rather sit next to your wife.
Okay, yeah. You know, I've been watching you for 30 years, chasing her. But
That's why I can't get fired. For all you people to go, oh, he's going to get fired. No, I just won't.
I did fire you, you just wouldn't leave.
That's probably more true.
Thought you were out of here. Okay, Trent, we're so grateful, buddy. I don't have any really prepared questions for you. You could take questions from the audience,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
you could just tell us about you and your history as mayor. You know,
Yeah.
Okay,
Hap-
go
happy
ahead.
to,
It's all
happy
up to
to.
you.
I mean, I was saying lifelong Utah, from elementary school to graduate school, attended Utah schools, my business record, really helping companies, alien organizations get back on their feet. And I've done that consistently for the past 10 plus years, and as a mayor, an elected office there 10 years. And I think the way I've framed this election, Don, is look, we have the opportunity to get rid of Mitt Romney, somebody who voted with Biden 60% of the time, who still thinks Biden would be a better president than Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know what world he's living in. He clearly is checked out. He's not in touch with the average Utahn. He doesn't understand Bidenomics and Biden inflation. The average Utah family spending over $1,000 more a month, just with groceries and everything else. I mean, this guy clearly doesn't pay for his own groceries. So it's unbelievable to me that he would still take that tack. But that's the only thing he's ever been passionate about, Mitt Romney, is to attack President Trump. I mean, if he had exhibited that level of energy back in 2012, he'd have been our president, right? He really would have. But I tell you, what I've been telling folks in Utah, and this has really resonated, is that this election, what it's all about is replacing Mitt with somebody who has demonstrated the backbone and the resolve to actually stand up to the establishment and say no. That's what I am so sick and tired of. I mean, as a mayor, we've got one here in the audience tonight. Oh, here you go. He's
Mayor, this
I was-
Mayor
the
John
lights.
Lee.
John, good to meet you. I mean,
I asked John to go up because we would like to see two mayors have an arm wrestling contest.
absolutely.
Here.
It looks like he might win.
We move this out.
But I mean, you can't. You have to balance your budget, and the federal government seems to think they're exempt. So I like the question, Dave, about cutting. That's one of the main motivators for me getting in this race. With the age of my children, I've told folks that is the height of immorality to place that level of debt, $34 trillion, on my kids and on future generations. The only thing I agreed with Mitt Romney about when he said in late September, he wasn't going to seek re-election, he said it's time for another generation to come in and handle these issues that they are going to be living with. Well, I can agree with that we have to be able to get serious about the deficit. We got to be able to stand up and say no. The congressman talked a little bit about the budget appropriations process, those 12 appropriations subcommittees. We've got to get back to that. I've actually signed a contract with the state of Utah, with all Americans. I said there are 7 points in there. 2 of them are balanced budget amendment, and I will not vote for an omnibus spending bill, period. Won't do it.
Amen.
That's how we get back and restore order. The other way we do this is we got to have the REINS Act, the REINS, REINS Act. Senator Lee has been championing this. Guys, do you realize we have about 100,000 pages of regulation every year that are created by a bunch of 3-letter agencies, unelected bureaucrats that aren't accountable because they're not elected. And it's disgusting. I go into Senator Lee's office, and it stands about 4 feet tall every year for the last several years. And that is because Congress has abdicated their responsibility to these unelected bureaucrats. The REINS Act pulls it in and says, you can propose rules, EPA, DEA, all these agencies. You can propose rules, but they got to come back into Congress. We vote on them before they take the effect of law.
You remember when Pelosi said, we got to pass this so we can read it? That was the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard. But anyhow, okay. So John Lee, been a great Nevadan, and served in the state assembly, the state senate, mayor of North Las Vegas, 10, 12 years? 9 years. and brought that city out of bankruptcy. It was within a day of filing bankruptcy when he was elected, and now it's the #1 on the Moody's, Standard & Poor's, all that bond ratings and all that good stuff. But John, would you like to ask our great guest from Utah here? You got any questions for him, or what would you like to say?
Actually, no, I don't really. I understand how to run a city, and I'm sure you do now after this many years. And the things that we had to do, I'm sure you had to do to create change within your community. One thing that's interesting that I'd like to tell you is Rob Bishop is a dear friend of mine.
Great guy.
Rob Stewart was a dear friend of mine. Chris Stewart's a friend of mine. I was just endorsed by Burgess Owens, and
He has his headquarters in my city, in Riverton,
yeah,
his
so
campaign headquarters.
And why do I mention that?
He's my
Because
congressman.
we have everything in common, you know, and sometimes Nevada thinks that we don't want to be California, but who do we want to be? We need to have friends like Arizona, you, and Idaho, you know, and we need to be stronger in the West and less concerned just about the ancestral highway, the 15, and what happens up and down that, but more what happens for our residents here and what happens to your residents there. So I'm just letting you know, when I get elected, I'm going to be looking forward to you working with me on Southern Nevada bills the way that, you know, Bennett used to work with us on stuff. You know, we've had better relationships. Since Romney got in there, we have no relationship. So I would expect you to, once again, be a partner for Nevada.
Absolutely. And that is a commitment I can make right here, right now, on this stage. That is something that we want to do, and you're absolutely right. We have to be able to work together. You know that too as a mayor. You've got to be able to do that and work within, you know, just with other community members. And that's something that I've done for 10 years. We'll continue to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Don, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
Thumbs up.
endorsing him. Go put it on your letterhead.
Got his endorsement.
Anybody but Romney.
Should we harvest some votes for him over here in Nevada?
No.
Utah, or what?
Actually, my goal would be bigger than you, to try to be bigger than Utah someday, but they have got a great system up there within their legislature that works with businesses quite well. Down here, I was the only mayor that was driving diversification of our economy. Where up there, up north, they all get together and work at sustaining the state through diversification and education. So I think you have a great state, and I'm looking forward to being your partner up there.
I went to college in Utah, and we had a good time up there. We didn't learn much, but we skied, we ate a lot of great food, and had a ton of fun.
What college did you go to?
BYU.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. So anyway, maybe you have questions for Nevada. I don't know. What's your thinking?
Well, it's interesting to see a lot of the similarities, right? With the public lands issue in particular, I think spending, some of the questions that have already come out here are the same questions and concerns that Utahns have, frankly. And it's, you know, one of the challenges I think too that we have is combating wokeism, right? And something that I think has made its way into our military, into our education system, everywhere. That's what I'm hearing as I'm traveling in the state, you know. So it's been the budget, the debt, this regulatory state that's run amok, and how we got to cut regulation big time. It's a $4 trillion drag on our economy. It costs the average employer about $20,000 per employee to come into compliance with all the garbage that the federal government throws at you. And as I've been talking with folks, they say, Trent, I've heard of too big to fail, but what about too small to succeed? I feel like I've got a business, I'm too small, I can't afford the army of accountants and attorneys. And so those are the things, the public lands, immigration, we talked a little bit about that too. That's a huge issue in our state. And I'm just wondering what you're hearing too. Is it something similar?
So let me throw something out to you. So I've been 25 years with being on boards and commissions all the way to mayor now, state assembly, state senate, and here. And it's interesting to me that we do have a lot in common, but the things that we don't have in common are, well, let me think this. I want to make sure that when we deal with the federal government out west, and my wife is from St. George, Utah, and I have a little home in town called Pine Valley, and my kids live in Utah, but we don't trust our government out west. We don't trust our government in Nevada, you know. And I can tell you when that mushroom cloud went over St. George and killed all those girls with breast cancer, stuff like the above ground testing and stuff like that, I really am concerned about how you and I can hold our government in check. These people out here don't want us to vote on things just to get reelected again. How do you and I work together to hold our government in check? And my question to you is, what's your idea? I have a few ideas, but I'd like to hear what your, and I'm not attacking you on this by any means, but are you going to stand strong with me? Are you going to lock arms with us out west here and fight for, on our water right issues, on our land issues? You know, there's a lot of public lands in Nevada that are loaded with lithium. We can't get a hold of it, and neither can your state, to do better things with the land that we have. So anyway, I'm just want to throw out some big issues on, can we stick together?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to work together on those. I mean, we are, I think you're the most arid state in the country, right? We're the second most in Utah, and that Colorado Compact, you know, that's been dated back in the 1920s, we're looking at. So that absolutely, as to the growth of government, that's been the problem. I can absolutely work with you. I'm glad to hear that you're someone, too, that wants to keep the government in check, right? I mean, that's been the problem. It's a big reason why I'm running, is because government has far exceeded the size scope that our founders envisioned. We have the Constitution for a reason. Article 1, Section 8 delineates those things, the roles and responsibilities the federal government's supposed to be in charge of. And the problem is that they are now involved in pretty much everything, that they're failing, utterly failing to do the few things they're supposed to do. And so how we do that, we've got a big responsibility we will have in Congress with the power of the purse, and to keep it in check and have those appropriations subcommittees working the way they're supposed to and standing up and saying, we're not funding this anymore.
Can I have one more question? This is just a question for me and you now. I don't think, as I look and study the world, what's going on around me, and I'm watching what Hamas is happening here in the United States, and I'm watching them shut down freeways, and I'm seeing all the chaos that they're now doing. I really don't believe most people know the difference between Hamas and Israel, and how close they are, and what the problems are and stuff like that. Here's what I believe. I think our personal freedoms are going to be deteriorated because I really think it's a war on religion. Today it will be this religion, Israel. Tomorrow it will be the LDS faith. It will be the Catholic faith and stuff like that. We need to have people in Congress that are going to fight to protect our rights to be able to worship God that we want. Choice of school for our children. Parental rights for mothers and fathers and things like those. When you talked about woke, basically what you were saying is the government telling us and how we will worship and what we will do.
As an
with our
employer of
children.
4,000 people, I can, up until last year when I sold my company, this woke thing is costing us a lot of money. And maybe that's $20,000, but it's not just the 20. Yeah. It's the cost is, you cannot measure it. It's all down through. The way we think and operate, we can't function. We're not efficient anymore.
And you're right, there is a war. It's an ideology in and of itself. That's why I say smaller government, safer families, stronger economy. If you go to my website, the safer families component, one of the policy prescriptions is, I said, we need a wall of separation between, not church and state, between woke and state. It's an insidious ideology that's made its way into many federal agencies. It's been pushed out. I mean, I can't believe that, for example, the Department of Education, I call for that, getting rid of it. It's $184 billion in their budget this year. The state of Utah only relies about 6 or 7% of its education budget from federal dollars. Yet they control everything, right? And I have state school board members that have endorsed my candidacy, and they said, Trent, this is a big problem. And you're darn right it is. I never thought I'd see the day in Utah, in my own school district, where my 14-year-old son goes to junior high school, and my 11-year-old daughter in 6th grade, where I have almost 200 books, wholly inappropriate, completely inappropriate. I got parent organizations that alerted me to the fact I had to go there as a mayor and stand up to the school board and say, get rid of this stuff now. This has no educational value, get rid of it. And so, yes, we're fighting a war because they want to destroy the family, I firmly believe, and they want to make the individual, dependent on government. That's the problem. and we have to fight that, keep the government in check, just like you said.
I like this guy. Thank you, Don.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. Well, it's probably time to try to bring this to a little bit of a close, but I can tell you, these two guys and Congressman Amade, we are supporting them, and I hope that everybody can financially, we promise we're not going to turn this into a pitch meeting, but nevertheless, we got to save this world and we got to save this state. So, as I just created a new award. What does that say?
The #1 North NV couple.
Nevada couple. Okay. So as I look out in the audience, I got to tell you, I got a long history with the best couple in Nevada. Would Frank and Bonnie Martins please stand up? Come on, give it up. There's a real Nevada couple that built Southern Nevada. I don't know how much you did up north, but you guys are fabulous. We love you. And I know everybody in this room loves you. So I made this up. I will. Give me that, I'll frame it. You're going to have to frame it because I can't afford to.
It says couple, not
Well, no, it's couple. They're a man and a woman. Oh. All right. Yeah, my heart just goes out for people. I look around everybody here. I got my little buddy, Larry Campbell. Anyhow, so grateful for everybody coming out here. But let's all do the right thing. Please come back and hang out with us, on these Tuesday nights. It's kind of fun. We haven't crossed any lines with no fist fights or anything. But we have had it got a little rough a couple of times, on some words, but it's really been fabulous. George, thank you for your great work in putting this together. All right. And now, how do...
Just so all of you know, I'm happy to do all this. Shane and we do this. Don told us to bring all you. This is for you. This isn't for us. This is a we thing, not a me thing. We want to do this, try to do this every month. It's very hard to get good speakers to come down. We want for you guys to be able to come in, enjoy this. We're going to bring speakers, and we need you to tell all your friends, and we need you to bring all your friends to the hotel because we got to pay the power bill.
Yeah, spend a little money in the restaurant. Hey, the food's good. If you haven't eaten here, the food's good and so forth. How do we help you, two gentlemen? Is there any quick shortcut to your...
Well, with federal races, we're up at the end of a quarter. Yeah, December 31st in this year. So it's important that we continue to show strength, and we don't have, because Mitt Romney may not be on the ballot, but he has a hand-picked successor in our state,
Right.
an
Did you tell
establishment
him
guy.
about it already?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
But there is a hand-picked guy. He's trying to prop up. He would just be Mitt Romney's lapdog, Mitt Romney 2.0, I say, and we can't have that. If we want to change the course of this country, that's the thing I'm most excited about, being able to work with great conservative America First candidates. We can actually move the ball. We have enough there, great slate of Senate candidates, some that are already in there. So if you go to TrentStaggs.com, it's STAGGS, TrentStaggs.com. You can donate there. Happy to talk with you about the state of our race, and that would be a great support. Thank you.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to get hold of me, then, I'll help you get to him. In fact, I'll throw you in my airplane, and Frank Martin will pay the gas, and we'll come to that great state
Thanks,
of Utah,
Frank.
and we'll bring a whole bunch of people up there. So we really want to help you.
So
John,
just,
what you got cooking?
Just so you know, it's not unique to what you put up with. We have a congressman named Stephen Horsford who's a deadbeat. And so when I was mayor, and we're trying to, our bond ratings are all junk. We were going out of business before I came in and fixed it, and I fired all the directors, and a lot of very important things, But this guy never called me up one time and says, John, what can I do to help? He's my congressman, right? I knew him in the Senate. I couldn't stand him there. I thought maybe I'd give him a chance. We get COVID. I'm not doing what the governor says. Our police guys don't want to get the shot, or if nobody wants to get the shot, we're not getting a shot, I didn't force anybody to do that. This guy never calls up during COVID. How can I help you? This guy, I have an office that I rented to the
Can I just say, I like this guy?
Well, but
Because I did the same thing. No to the mask mandate. One of the only mayors in 2020 to say that. No to vaccines. So I like this guy.
So I rent a building,
job.
I rent an office in the city hall, so whoever's a congressman can be in that office, you know. And the guy's never there. He never shows up. He's always gone somewhere else. They made him they elected him to the chairman of the Black Caucus. Doesn't that sound exciting? All the black people in America have plenty to go to and talk to. Guess what? If you're a Republican, you're not allowed in the Black Caucus in the House of Representatives. This guy is a deadbeat. You had one, I have one. Let's change what's happening out west here. Got it?
Love it.
Thank
Love
you.
it.
Nice job, guys. All right. Well, I want to end it by thanking my beautiful wife for supporting me. She's amazing, Carolyn. You guys haven't gotten to know her. Get to know her. Okay, I don't know how to bring this to an end. Do we?
Shane's going to come up. He wants to say a few words.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before you leave, you sign the petition that makes people have to show an ID to vote. Where do they sign? On the way out?
Right, just see Mr. Dave Gibbs on your way out. And then after that, I just want to let everybody know that it is Tomahawk Tuesday in Chef Joel's Chop House tonight, and we'd love to have you guys in there. Thank you so much for coming.